I'd like to firstly start by acknowledging and paying deep respect to the longest living culture, the traditional owners of the lands that we all meet on this afternoon. I pay my respects to the Bindal and Wulgarugabar people, the first people that have lived in the Townsville region for which I am based in Townsville. I pay my respects to the elders past and present, and I extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are participating in this online panel this afternoon. Welcome to Navigating a Pathway in STEM. I really hope that you enjoy this afternoon. I want to acknowledge that we have 135 registrants for this panel, and probably one of the most diverse audiences in terms of everyone from families, from children to grandmas, to industry, academia, teachers, and also students in primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of learning. Welcome to you all this afternoon. We have two fabulous sponsors for this online panel. The first this afternoon is Australia's Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation, which you probably know more as ANSTO. And we have a representative from ANSTO, the Education Manager, Bridget Murphy, who's going to talk to you about ANSTO and the programs that they have, which you might be interested in engaging with. Welcome, Bridget.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And yes, my name's Bridget Murphy. I'm the Education Manager at ANSTO. We have some of Australia's most important scientific facilities here, and also amazing experts who can use this equipment to do amazing science at really, really small scales. So at the level of atoms and even smaller. I work at the Discovery Centre, where we welcome about 17,000 visitors onto our Lucas Heights campus on Darawal country every year. And we connect with thousands more online via video conference. So every day we are welcoming enthusiastic young scientists, future scientists through our doors. And I think it's so important that female students can see a sustainable and a workable future for themselves as STEM professionals when they visit us here at ANSTO. So that's why we're so grateful that so many of our female scientists are fantastic communicators, amazing ambassadors for promoting women in STEM. So whether it be answering student questions in a Meet an Expert video call, or taking university students, taking their questions in a Q&A careers panel, or being part of a special guest tour, it's so important because these interactions leave a really long-lasting impression on our young visitors for a really long time. So when female students get to visit and speak with these female scientists, working across lots of different roles, different levels of responsibility, it helps those students, those female students, see themselves in the job, which is a big hurdle. So thanks to very much to all of the scientists at ANSTO who give up their time for these programs. So just quickly, a couple of stats for you and a couple of programs that we run. So we've been running Girls in STEM programs for secondary school students for a very long time now, but this year is the first time we've formalised that as a work experience program. So we've got a number of these work experience programs, but one will be female only, and that happens in 2 weeks' time. We'll be welcoming 12 female students from years 9 to 12 here at ANSTO for an immersive week here. I can see on the call here that we do have a representative from the Harding Miller Education Foundation. So we do partner with them for a number of programs each year. We also run STEAM Club programs as well. So these STEAM Club programs happen face-to-face as well as online. Our face-to-face programs welcome 24 female students each year, aged 8 to 13. And we really get them doing hands-on programs with STEM, or in fact STEAM, so that's art added into STEM. And these are highly engaging, booked out really quickly. But we also have our online version. So we're dealing with hundreds of people hundreds of students who have been involved in that program over the last few years, and most of those are female. Our school holiday technology workshops, once the domain of boys only, has been slowly increasing over the last few years in terms of female participation, which is great. And then lastly, at the international level as well, we've had 120 female scientists, teachers, communication specialists from all over the world attend our training courses as part of the International Atomic Energy Agency course called Supporting Women for Nuclear Science Education and Communications. So we try to work at all different levels to encourage that female participation in STEM. So thank you very much for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this webinar.
Thank you, Bridget, and thank you to ANSTO once again. Our other sponsor is Google, who also generously sponsored this online panel series for Women in STEM Australia. Both ANSTO and Google enabled this online panel to be free to all attendants, all 135 people that registered for this webinar. So thank you to our sponsors. We're very grateful, and we hope that this is something that is both informative but allows you to connect beyond today. Also keep an eye on the chat for links that may be shared from the different speakers today. If you're wanting to connect in particular ways, that's certainly a place to look. Also, there will be links and information shared after from the different experts. If there's particular things that are spoken about, we can certainly share that through Women in STEM Australia. Now, in terms of our panel, navigating a pathway to a STEM career can be very challenging. Firstly, the diverse options of careers can sometimes be unknown or also misconceived. Secondly, the information is a lot of times outdated, limited, or be misinformed depending on where the young person may get it from. Involving family, especially parents, in STEM learning experiences, as well as the pathway of STEM, is really essential for girls. Parents are role models as well as key influences in a girl's career pathway. Involving family, not just in STEM, but in those decisions, enriches a girl's experience and ensures that a girl remains in STEM lifelong. By the time a girl reaches the age of 10, they have started to formulate their ideas and make decisions about their world, themselves, and their future. Girls rely very much on facts and information to make decisions about their future. So events like this are essential to provide girls and their key influencers with information to support them navigating their pathways and making informed decisions. Now, to do this afternoon, we have an extraordinary expert panel, and I'm very grateful to introduce our panelists this afternoon, starting with Karen Taylor-Brown, the CEO, publisher and co-founder of Refraction Media. Now, Refraction Media has been operating for 10 years, and one of my favourite magazines that comes from Refraction Media is Careers with STEM, distributed to over 2 million people, the free magazines, over those 10 years. Now, that nearly deserves a standing ovation on its own. Refraction Media supports educators, parents, students, and prepares people for their careers and future. Careers with STEM sends those guides to students across the United States of America, Australia, and New Zealand. So this afternoon, Karen Taylor-Brown will share with you her expertise for the fact she publishes about careers pathways. So thank you, Karen, for being on our panel. Scott Sleep is the Managing Director of Sleep Business Consultants, and he is a renowned STEM leader. He developed the STEM Industry School Partnerships Program in New South Wales. He's a past Prime Minister's Prize winner for excellence in secondary science education and a 2023 Winston Churchill Fellow. He's very dedicated to empowering girls in STEM. So thank you very much, Scott, for being with us this afternoon. Lucy Sattler is also a part of our panel. She is a CEO and founder of Study, Work and Grow. She is a career development practitioner working with James Cook University and also in her business Study, Work and Grow. She's worked with hundreds of schools, universities, not-for-profits, industry bodies and employers across Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom. She helps young people make smarter decisions and a perfect person to have on our panel this afternoon. And last but definitely not least is Veena Nair, the STEM project leader from Viewbank College. She has more than 20 years experience in science education. She's a 2022 Prime Minister's Prize winner for excellence in science teaching in secondary schools. She does extraordinary work collaborating with industry leaders and academia, introducing STEAM careers for her students. She collaborates with industry and academics, and within that, she is also an expert that serves on panels and initiatives around sustainability to space exploration. Well, that's pretty much all the pathways and everything in between. So our well-esteemed panel that we have today are here to answer your questions. We got so many questions from your registrations. They were so exciting to receive. But as I spoke to the panel prior to you logging in, we could possibly have a panel every day for a year and not answer them all. So we've picked a selection of questions in hope that these start you mapping out your pathway and an acknowledgement that you have to start somewhere and every step, even the smallest one, counts. So we are going to kick off this afternoon with the question, how are we currently supporting students in their career decisions? And this is to give you a broad range of our panelists and the experience they have, but also the support that is there for our young people, particularly girls. So Karen, would you like to start us off this afternoon?
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for welcoming me here today. I'm joining you from Dharawal country, which is in the Sutherland Shire of Sydney, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present. This is such an exciting topic, and I think it's brilliant to get all these different people together to talk about it. In answer to your question about how we're currently supporting students, there's a range of different ways, and I guess we all need to choose a way that complements each other's work. So with Careers with STEM, we're all about providing the aspiration and the inspiration. So our platform includes a print magazine that goes to every Australian secondary school 4 times a year. And the idea of that print magazine is to really showcase diverse people doing interesting and cool things in STEM and showing what the cutting edge careers are and how to get there as well. So we make sure that we've got people that represent all different walks of life. And if you go back and look at some back issues, you'll see we've got a big focus on promoting girls in STEM. And we've also got a big focus around breaking down stereotypes around who does STEM and what those jobs look like as well. So by pulling these stories together, we hope that we'll connect with any student that picks up the magazine. Will find someone that they'll connect with. And it's written in a style that the students can read it and their main influencers, their parents and teachers, can become informed as well. And really get an understanding about how the jobs are changing and evolving, but also get a little bit of insight into what's on the horizon, what's next, how can we prepare our students and our children to be well equipped for the careers of the future. So I think it's fantastic that we can hopefully complement and collaborate what teachers are doing in classrooms by giving them that cutting edge information, and we do the interviewing and the design that it can makes it into a product that can be easy to consume, easy to share, but also easy to reference back to again and again.
Thank you, Karen. And Veena, as an educator, what support are you currently giving to your students around career decisions?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for inviting me to this esteemed panel. And I also pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging in our audience today. What we do as a school, or every school does, is that we have a career practitioner who guides students right from year 7 to year 12, mapping their journey in their career aspirations, many times having conversations with their parents and their families as they go. But as a STEM leader or a STEAM leader, what I can do is offer those niche opportunities that are there for exploring these different fields and getting girls to experience it themselves to make those decisions. Just like what Karen said, of course, careers with STEM becomes a big part of that exploration as well. At my school, we do run things like STEAM Club, where we invite industry experts to come along, and give opportunities for students, girls, to interact directly with industry experts. But we also run what is a biannual, every 2 years, a conference called STEAM Futures Conference, where again, we do the same thing. We invite industry experts, we invite academics and from diverse fields, so that students can get a real idea of what is happening in the industry currently and how each one of them has reached to that point where they can now come and explain to other people what they are doing. So there are lots of other opportunities that schools do in this space. A lot of industries do in this space. And I think it is just a matter of looking for it and going from there.
Thank you, Veena. And Lucy, your perspective, what support do you currently give students around career decisions?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Lucy. I'm in Cairns in Far North Queensland. That's the home of the Giveaway, Wallabarri Yindiji people. And I'd just like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and emerging. I'm also super excited to be part of such a great panel, and so grateful to Sarah and Women in STEM for putting this together. It is such a great question, such an important one that we ask in forums like this. How are we currently supporting students? As Veena mentioned, within our schools, we have career development practitioners, careers advisors, guidance officers who are doing a lot of that work on the ground. And they're always the people that I suggest parents and students go to see first, because they're the ones who are building those local connections with industry, doing all that hard work on the ground. With my social enterprise study at Go, what we do is we actually support those careers advisors and those schools so they can have really great conversations, because a bit like what Karen does with Careers with STEM, we give them lots of resources so that they're not having to kind of put those things together themselves. They can just have great conversations. And lately what we've been doing is really focusing on the career clusters, which is a different way of thinking about careers in general, but also careers in STEM. And they allow us to sort of see all of the different range of careers that we have in STEM, not just people who are scientists and engineers and those people sort of in those hero jobs, but also people like Sarah, like yourself. Everyone in this panel is working in STEM, just maybe not necessarily in a lab or what you would normally think of as a STEM career, but they're still really important STEM careers. And that's what a lot of our work has been around lately, is raising awareness of all of those options that are out there.
Fantastic. And last but not least on this question, Scott, your insights.
Yes, look, coming from Wonnarua land here today in the beautiful Hunter Valley in New South Wales, and just pay my respects to any Aboriginal people who are here today. As has been pointed out, this is an extremely important and sometimes challenging area. You mentioned, Sarah, that young people are making careers decisions, or about what careers they're not going to get involved with, very early. So we also have a situation where a number of careers for our young people don't exist yet. So when we're looking at careers education, we need to be looking at it in terms of empowering young people to be able to find information and find the careers. So that's where we work in New South Wales of trying to do this within curriculum. So we developed in New South Wales a curriculum called iSTEM, so the integrated STEM. And within that particular curriculum, the careers component is baked in. And part of that is working on hands-on activities and trying to get students to explore the opportunities from areas that they're interested in, basically, and finding out, well, if I'm interested in science or I'm interested in solving problems, well, what are the different types of professions I could go into? And so the challenge to actually do that, and of course, using great resources like Careers with STEM and the different people that we have around here, that's what we do. But within New South Wales Department of Ed too, we also have academies of STEM excellence. So often careers education needs to be done at a local level. So we have 11 of those academies around New South Wales where we can provide specific advice, and to the point where a number of the speakers have already spoken as well about bringing industry into the schools and making them available, and particularly in the areas of women in STEM, making sure that we are giving equal representation. The whole adage, you can't be what you can't see. So making sure that we're rolling over those stereotypes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Now, we've mentioned a range of different support, but it's also being aware of what pathways might actually be possible for girls to pursue when they're thinking about a career in STEM. Now, we've said at the beginning, and maybe you signed up when you saw that these pathways sometimes aren't so clear. And as Scott mentioned, some of them don't even exist yet. So how do we build a pathway to something that doesn't exist? So Scott, I might start with you. What are some of the pathways that young people can pursue or follow in order to gain a career in STEM?
Well, although I've got many hats, and one of my hats is working at the University of Newcastle. And I'm going to say something controversial here because, particularly coming from the university sector, sometimes that those career pathways in Australia are too focused on university pathways. And particularly my son today started his HSC, and the idea of ATAR and that everything we do is to get an ATAR to go into a profession. The fact is that STEM professions are around 60 to 70% of them in Australia are not university pathways anyway. And of the students that will be going into my local university, Newcastle Uni, give them a plug, only about 28% of them will come from ATAR. So like the whole HSC sort of aspect is an issue, but often people forget about all the different pathways to get there. Obviously through TAFE, but apprenticeships, all sorts of work. I also think of STEM careers as obviously the fastest growing area, but it's STEM in careers that we need to also be discussing, because most of our careers that we're going into are going to have a STEM component. So therefore, when we're talking about pathways, it is really about learning and becoming a lifelong learner and building the skill sets that people are after. The way you get into the roles and what you're interested in is so varied. If you're passionate about something, you will get there depending on the pathway you choose to get there with.
Fantastic. I love the STEM in careers. That's certainly a point that needs to be highlighted more strongly. Okay, Veena, another educator's perspective in terms of pathways that you're aware of or you work with your students to support them about.
I will 100% repeat everything that Scott said. I completely agree with him. It is not, it's not a pipeline of, you take this subject. Today's careers are an amalgamation of so many different aspects. You can't have just one skill and go into a career of any sort. And I completely agree with Scott in saying that it is the STEM in the career. It is about developing that curiosity, that creativity, that problem solving, resilience, grit. All those skills are really the core ways in getting into any career today. And it is also about seeing the connections between different aspects of different jobs and finding where you fit in. So, for example, someone might be really good and keen on photography, and they might just go and get a job as a photographer in a scientific lab, photographing atoms or things like that, microbes. Now, that is a different career path. I'm sure when they did photography, they had no way of thinking of that pathway, but that is how different areas come together and create a really successful career for a person. So I would encourage everyone to really pay attention to what Scott said, and also to keep that curiosity and resilience and grit, those skills, and doing projects. And I might even go and say, look for engineering opportunities. Because when you're engineering, you're coming up with a solution focus. So find those opportunities and pathways will automatically come to you.
And Lucy, in your profession and experience, what are some of the pathways that you advise young people about?
When it comes to careers that people are wanting to have a bit of a STEM focus with their career and they're trying to work out how to build a pathway, the number one tip that I give them is to keep their options open. And sometimes that means maybe taking a science in senior school, or thinking about, vocational pathways as well as university. But it also means things like not neglecting digital literacy. Future Skills Organisation have come up with some research lately, and we're going to need literally hundreds of thousands of people to work in digital field or with digital skills. But not many young people take digital studies or software development in high school anymore. It's I think it's sitting around 4% of students at the senior level take those subjects. But they can really do a lot to keep people's options open. So if in year 11 and 12 they're taking some sort of digital or IT subject, that's going to give them foundation skills they can then build on, no matter which way their career kind of takes them, whether they end up in science or in engineering or whichever kind of pathway. Even if they end up in health, something which is related to STEM, but maybe we don't always think of first up. If they've got those digital skills and they've kept their options open, then they'll have more choice in which pathway they do take, so that when they're ready to make those decisions, they'll have the skills and the ability to do those things they need to do.
Thanks, Lucy. And Karen, in terms of your publication of Careers with STEM, you would have been able to have a bird's eye view of a range of pathways over your time. What are some of the different pathways that you've become aware of through Careers with STEM?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Sarah. And that's one of my favorite parts of putting the publication together, is interviewing various people and hearing what their career pathway has been. And the key thing that comes out is that it's mostly non-linear. It's not like they knew in high school what they wanted to do. And it might be a series of happy accidents determined where they were going to end up to, but it's some of those mindset qualities that seems to pull them through. So things like curiosity, like Vida mentioned, teamwork, collaboration, and also real openness to being continually learning new things, because the careers market isn't staying still, it's changing all the time. And I also would reiterate what Scott said, that it's not like we're talking about getting a job in STEM. It's about all jobs are going to be using STEM skills. And that's why we consciously called our platform Careers with STEM, not STEM jobs, because they're going to be in everything. And I think one of the key places to start your daughter or your child on that STEM pathway is to really tap into what they're interested in, because STEM is going to be in every area. So one of the narratives or formulas we use, we call it STEM plus X, where STEM is your foundation, and it's really important to get those foundation skills, but X is your passion, an area that you're interested in, or an area that's got great booming potential that's going to just continue to grow. So for example, if you go to our website, you can search by your STEM foundation, or you can search by your X. So if you've got a student who thinks that they're not very technical, not very sciencey, but they love animals, you can search all the careers there where they can work with animals, and it'll show them some surprising ways where STEM foundations can help that. Likewise with sport, with fashion and beauty, with working in the environment. So I think it's really important when we're starting on a pathway that we talk about a student's interest. And that's what we've discovered from interviewing so many STEM professionals, that it was an interest or a spark or an unexpected experience that really switched their minds onto this exciting career, but also that eagerness to always be changing and developing, switching and not feeling like you have to be on one single pathway during your career.
Fantastic. And man, that would be such an awesome job to be able to see those snippets of pathways. Certainly is something that is intriguing to learn from different people. Now, acknowledging there are quite a few teachers here this afternoon on our online panel coming to listen to our experts. We have a question that sort of echoes across quite a few different areas, asking about how you've used student data to match and encourage students to engage with careers and extracurricular opportunities. Now, I'm going to target the two educators with this question, and certainly our other panelists, if you want to add to this where you've got a golden gem, please do also let me know. But firstly, Veena, where have you used student data to match and encourage students to engage with careers and extracurricular opportunities?
So couple of things that I can point out. In every school, usually there is a profile, student profile that is done, and the interviews that are done quite early on to get a gauge of what their likes and dislikes are. That forms one part of the data. It's not the whole picture, it's just one, because we know students learn, change their interest and things like that. What we do is also we ask the students directly if they are interested in taking up certain opportunities, extracurricular opportunities. So when we advertise it specifically. Some opportunities that come to us as school are meant for girls only. For example, I'm going to give a plug in here for Go IT Go Girls from Deakin University. It's a really great example of how girls can get motivated just by going to a whole day event. What we did and what we found out after that event, as a survey when we did, was that the perception of girls had changed tremendously as to what careers in IT meant. And so they immediately started relating to what subjects were there available at school that they could take on further. So that is one way of doing it. The other way to do that is also the students were not keen on STEM, because there are a lot of girls who really pushed back initially, saying that it's not for me. And so sometimes we really need to encourage them to have a go and develop those. Maybe it is through leadership opportunities, maybe it is through other events that we try to engage with them. So we might seek students who are good in leadership and get them involved into STEM activities as well. So these are the two types of data that I look for in the school, going to our house leaders and asking them to provide me with names of students who might fit into, and also make it open, really open to parents and students to opt in certain events. So it's not only in that space.
Thanks, Veena. And Scott.
I'm going to give you an example of where we've used data poorly in this example. Originally, when we started at Maitland Grossman High School, we first started doing the iSTEM program, we actually targeted high-performing students, and we used data from the math, science, and we created this class based off that data. What we found is that data, or those students, were not the best targeted students. And in fact, what we discovered is that students that are actually at the high academic level tend to not be our best problem solvers. They're not our most creatives. They're more interested in actually just doing school. And what we did discover is when we had students that were self-motivated and got involved in these programs and the different type of teaching and learning that we were using, more student-centered approaches, teamwork, and so forth, that we found that there were a lot of students that were in our school who were underperforming because the type of delivery that was done didn't suit their learning style. And what we found with STEM is that a lot of our students who are really good at STEM are not necessarily demonstrating the highest academic standards, because often they're bored with what they're doing. Rote learning, the type of chalk and talk type of lesson for them doesn't suit their learning style. So there's an example of where it didn't work, and we learned from it. But where we also look for opportunities is, are the programs that we're doing leading to students making choices? And the best way we're able to do that was actually look at if they chose STEM subjects. So in a pilot program in the Hunter, we worked with about 80% of the schools. A lot of them were doing iSTEM and other programs. We tracked them over a 7-year period of time. And during that time, we demonstrated a 19.22% increase in STEM uptake in the senior school. At the same time, when we benchmarked that against the state had gone backwards. So not necessarily specifically linking to students, but we were linking the choice of subject to then go into potential STEM careers. But in terms of the future of using data, I think for careers is really in AI. There are already programs that are out there where students are able to almost have their own partner or special assistant. So putting their interests and putting their information in, these AI systems will assist students in determining the type of career choices that may be made available to them. The only proviso that I'll say there is that some of our AI systems do have some gender bias in them, and that's something that needs to be worked on.
Thank you, Scott. And mentioning different databases, I know, Lucy, within Study Work Grow, you have a program that is able to provide I guess, a way of identifying interest with potential pathways. Would you be able to talk a little bit about that in terms that people may not have heard about that so much? You mentioned it briefly before, but also potentially to share that link as a different way of exploring pathways through your organisation.
Yeah, sure. So what we know about career development theory, what it tells us is that people make decisions usually around conversations, and a young person's career decision generally comes as a result of multiple conversations they've had with their parents and their teachers and the whole range of people who are around them. So what we've done is, rather than providing another matching service, so they don't do a quiz and then get matched with a job, we basically give them some tools to unpack a little bit about themselves. So what their strengths are, what their skills are, what kinds of activities they enjoy. And that gives them a sort of a starting place. And then what they're able to do with that starting place is then think about some of the things that they're interested in, which might be outside of school, whether they're involved in their community or in maybe something more artistic. And then bring all of those things together and have a deep think about what careers might be right for them. And then we encourage them to have lots of positive conversations. And that might be with, like I said, parents, teachers, Also with role models. So that's where there are some great mentoring programs in STEM that are around now, particularly for women, where young women can talk to mentors in different STEM industries. So we take a holistic picture. It's not just our thing in isolation, and I'll share the link to that in a minute in the chat. But it's tying that back into those conversations they can have at home, at school, and also with industry, so that maybe when they do go on work experience programs, or they are taking part in things like iSTEM, they're able to ask better questions and then able to incorporate the information that they find out about themselves back into their decision-making process. So very holistic.
Fantastic. And I think that would be very useful for people to be able to see a different way of thinking about careers. Karen, in terms of careers with STEM, I'm sure that you've had feedback from students and teachers and parents over the time in terms of engagement with careers and extracurricular opportunities. Is there any particular standout things that you've found through what you've highlighted with careers with STEM?
Yeah, look, it's important that we always keep connected with our audiences, so we know that we're creating content that's going to resonate. So every year we'll do a survey with educators and ask them what they like during the year, what they'd like to see more of, and how they want to see it. And that's really been helpful for helping us uncover what special editions we should do. So we've been doing the cybersecurity special edition for a few years, and that's always the most popular one, because I think we hear a lot about cybersecurity. As consumers, we're concerned about our own cyber safety, but also there's a lot of opportunity. We need more people to be savvy in this area, just to be more responsible individuals, but the careers are booming there too. So we get feedback from our users, but we also, being a digital platform, we get a lot of digital data about where people are going on our website and what they're downloading. And that really kind of gives us a steer on what we need to do more of. So when I just explained to you the section where students can search by X, that's one of our most popular pages. And that kind of identified that we need to keep populating that with more X's and evolving those as interests change. And we can also measure data on views of our YouTube videos. So for the last couple of years, our number one viewed video was called What is AI? So I think people are kind of wanting to know a little bit more about what it is and what the career opportunities are, and this thing that they hear a lot more about. So we rely on that sort of feedback both digitally and also using surveys with teachers.
Fantastic. Well, we certainly have got some snippets so far of pathways, of being informed about those pathways. And Veena mentioned before about some particular skills that are important for somebody looking or considering a career with STEM around resilience and persistence. And Scott also mentioned that it's not necessarily the brightest spark in the classroom that gets A+ on everything that are the best STEM problem solvers. And a question that was asked was around what you think the most important skills are to learn when looking at a STEM career. We've heard some, but I'm going to go up along the panel for some that we haven't heard so far around skills that you think are really important in the day and age that we live in the fact that we are constantly evolving in terms of our workforce, and that requirement of STEM is so great. And Lucy, we're going to kick off with you, as we haven't started with you for one yet. What do you think are some of the most important skills?
I think there are lots of different skills that young people should be working on developing. But one thing that keeps coming to me from employers and industry in particular is that they're looking for young people who can communicate well and who can work in a team. And that crosses STEM, but every single industry and every single job. And I think it really does apply in STEM as well, because maybe that gets left behind a little bit. We're very focused on the problem solving and very focused on all of the exciting STEMmy stuff, but maybe not so much sometimes on those skills, the core skills like communication and teamwork that back up their ability to work in a team maybe, because those things are very important in those STEM environments. And if a young person hasn't also focused on those or hasn't also built those and given themselves opportunities to develop those kinds of skills, it can make it very difficult for them in the workplace, which kind of goes back to what Scott was saying about your students who are high performing, but maybe don't have kind of that broad base and a really rounded kind of profile. And that's certainly something that we are always recommending. So communication and teamwork would be my 2 top skills, even though they're not necessarily STEM related.
Fantastic. And you can see even running a panel like this, which is around STEM, we have people that are able to communicate their expertise and share their stories. So certainly encouraging the people that are on today listening to really encourage the young people that you're engaging with around developing those communication skills. It isn't all about just sending messages and hiding behind an email or a text. People still want to communicate face to face, and that's so true, especially working successfully in a team or with people you may not have met before. Now, Karen, in terms of people you've engaged with, are there any standout skills that you think are important to put in that toolkit for a STEM career?
Yeah, look, the one that always comes up whenever we interview STEM professionals is networking. And that surprised me at first because I kind of thought, how does a high school student network? Then it's not like they're going out to after work drinks or anything. But these people were saying it's really important to develop networking skills and actually do it even from high school to start building your circle of connections. And that way you'll find and discover more and more opportunities. So what seems to happen is if a student, say, reads an article about someone that they're inspired by, just encourage them to send them a message on LinkedIn or Twitter or something like that and make a connection, because these people really want to often give back and share their insights, share their advice. And hey, they might be working for Google or ANSTO and say there's an internship happening, or we've got a new work experience program, and be able to connect them with some real world opportunities there. Interestingly, I actually read just last week that LinkedIn's biggest growing demographic is Gen Z. So it would be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. I think a lot of Gen Z is interested in, forming their career early. And I think that networking skill is something that can serve them across a whole range of different areas, not only STEM careers.
I couldn't agree more, Karen, and that's something with the students that I teach at school. I put an opportunity to them each year to learn and practice networking, as it was something that myself as a student, I had no idea how to do, and I was the scared person hiding behind the plant in the corner of a room. It is something that is very worthwhile, and you never know what you'll learn as well. STEM people, I think, are the most intriguing. I can be biased and say that. So even to just go up and say, oh, so what do you do? That can start a whole life-changing conversation. Veena,
And they'll love it.
Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely. Veena, what's your perspective on important skills around a STEM career?
Sorry. I think everything that Karen said and Lucy said is absolutely true. Just like you, Sarah, networking for me, I came a little bit late, but it has helped me so much in understanding so many new things. And the one skill that I keep telling a lot of girls specifically is learn to accept technology and learn about new technologies. We are always getting new tools, really. So whether it is 3D printing, for example, whether it is laser cutting, whether it's small coding, or whether it is we all went on to big technology, massive boost during COVID with everyone going on Teams and Zoom. So we can do it. It is just that having that open mindset and saying, yes, let me try this and learn about this, because these are the technologies that are now, we call it emerging, but are really now going to be the mainstay of everything. So having that open mind and saying, I can do this, is more important.
Fantastic. Absolutely. And Scott, what about you? What's your perspectives?
just put in the chat, and I'd recommend that if you haven't already, to go onto the World Economic Forum and look at the top 10 skills that are required. And what you'll find in those, that all the skills that everyone has mentioned here are all in there. And they're a category of skill that we need to sort of be aware of. The category of skill, soft skills, non-technical skills, these are the type of things that are going to advance young people in their careers in the future. As we said, that some of these careers don't exist. So the skill sets that you are going to have that are most sought after are things like creative thinking, communications, interpersonal skills, that networking and so forth. Interestingly, I was at a forum and the top cybersecurity expert was asked this question: what's the #1 skill that they're going to need to be successful in cybersecurity? And she said creativity. So that whole thing about a technical job, and then you're thinking about a very non-technical skill set. And in the academic realms, they talk about a T-shaped individual. So all these non-technical skill sets are the horizontal part of the T, and then your actual depth of knowledge in your area of expertise is that part. Now, if you don't have the top of the T, you're not going to be sought after, irrespective of the fact that you've got a good depth of knowledge in your particular area.
Fantastic. And that is certainly a great picture to keep in mind, is that T skill set. And certainly something to keep in mind as you're developing skills, or whether you are supporting young people, it's encouraging them about possibly developing some of those skills. Now, we had quite a few questions from people that are participating this afternoon around work experience and how to obtain work experience with industry when they may not know how to contact them, don't have the confidence to. How can they do that within school, and how can they be supported? And are we aware of any STEM organisations or businesses that support young people to be able to have work experience in industry and STEM? So Scott, seeing as we finished with you, we'll go backwards and start with you. Do you have any examples or advice in terms of trying to gain work experience?
Particularly, Vina's already stole my thunder on this one, and I've actually put it in the chat. The Go IT Girls. So one of the very few advantages of the COVID pandemic has been the proliferation of online opportunities. The Go IT Girls have a virtual and as well as a hybrid and a face-to-face option. There are a number of organisations that do this type of work as well. So, but as I mentioned before, we have in New South Wales our academies of STEM excellence. So we have people who are working with the local community, obviously doing virtual, particularly in the IT area, where if you're in back of Burke, you may not have an IT industry that you can get work experience on. So the virtual works well. But if you're also in an area that has a local industry, the work experience is often obtained by talking to those sorts of people. Working with local government often is a good way. But what I can say is that all the different people on this panel all have different connections to different organisations that we would be able to put you in. The CSIRO have a great programs like this, as does Engineers Australia. So get in contact with your local experts or one of us, and we can direct you specifically to the industry that your young person is interested in being involved in.
Fantastic. And Lucy, I see that you shared in the chat a link. Do you want to expand on that, but also around work experience and your advice?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic. I've shared a link in the chat to Forage, which is an Australian supplier of virtual work experience, and they've partnered with lots of great organisations to offer virtual work experience in a whole range of industries. But my belief is that the best work experience is local. So like Scott mentioned, local councils, local water authorities, local businesses, those kinds of things. And when I'm working with young people, I recommend two things. The first is to think about their local networks, their friends' parents, their aunties and uncles, anyone they have in their community that's got anything that's even related to what they want to do. And then the other side of things is to think outside the box. So I get a lot of young people who are like, I want to be an engineer when I leave school, so I'm only going to take engineering work experience. They could work for a construction company, or they could think about all sorts of different things that are kind of related to engineering, or where they may get some exposure when they can't, say, get that particular engineering experience, for example. So don't sort of be really closed about having to definitely only have one type of work experience. Be open to lots of different things, because you never know what's going to come of it. So those are my sort of top tips for work experience.
Absolutely. And Karen, what's your perspectives on work experience?
Yeah, we get asked this a lot by different teachers and students about it. And it's a challenge because a lot of students want to work in a real environment, but it's difficult to provide those spots. So I think the virtual opportunities that are up there are fantastic as a way of just getting a taste for a career. But likewise, like Lucy was just saying, I think you really just work your networks to see who your mum knows, who your neighbours know. And it's important just to have a go of what it's like working in a professional environment, even if it's not the area that you eventually want to end up in.
Fantastic. That's really good advice. And Veena, your experiences of getting young people to engage with work experience in industry.
I'll go back to what a lot of what Scott said and everyone else said as well. But there are, in Victoria, we have some great initiatives with tech schools, and they really work closely in bringing industry in partnership with schools. And often they can be a great place for students and schools to connect and get that work experience opportunities for their students as well. The other thing that I would say is there are lots of professional organizations like Bionics Institute, for example, which we partnered this year, and our experience was absolutely amazing. The other one that comes to mind, which in Victoria, specifically for Victorian teachers and educators, there is another organization called ACON, and they work closely with Engineers Australia as well to offer exactly this, which is the work experience for Year 10 students. But the other one that I would also encourage students to consider is to go into VET courses. So taking in a VET elective might also open up that understanding of what actually happens in that sector. So lots of ways to go around it. And as Scott said, please feel free to connect, and we can point you to some other opportunities there.
A piece of perspective that I tell my students is to be curious. And realistically, if we're looking or considering a career that incorporates STEM or with STEM, we should have the ability, and generally are painful in terms of asking questions. We're curious, we ask questions. And to me, I encourage the students I teach to ask questions, be curious, and collect evidence. So to me, I see work experience as collecting evidence that will tell you either yes or no. Either way, that information is valuable. So when I was at high school, not that long ago, let's just put it that way, I watched country practice, and I wanted to be a park ranger and cuddle wombats and koalas and save the world and the environment. And so I decided, yep, that's what I want to do. And to be sure, I was curious and collected evidence. So I went for a week's work experience as a wildlife park ranger, and I raked fire breaks, cleaned toilets, and emptied rubbish bins. there was not a furry animal to cuddle in sight. It answered my question that it wasn't, I was hoping I could do it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. But it meant I didn't spend 3 or 4 years at university doing a degree in something that then I realised there'd be no furry animals at the end to cuddle. So to me, think of work experience as being curious, collecting information, and that information is valuable, whether it's not what you end up doing, it still gives you information about who you are and your pathway of where you want to be. And the more experiences, whether it is that you're working with your uncle on a veggie patch and you're looking at different fertilizers, through to working with your local council, whatever it might be that experience is, it gives you information in order to help make your pathway more clear in the future. So a little snippet from me, and lucky, I guess, that I didn't become a park ranger, or maybe I should have, and I could have had a koala here today as an extra person on the panel. Okay, in terms of the next question, a very important and one that I'm very passionate about, we're looking at girls and their families that are underrepresented in communities that include migrants, refugees from regional areas, culturally and linguistically diverse, that may not be aware of resources that are available. How do we support these girls and their families and overcome barriers that exist in order to support a girl navigating a career with STEM? Veena, would you like to start us off, as I know you've worked a lot in this area?
Yeah. I thank Sarah. Yes, it is a very, very important question, and a genuine reason for us to work doubly hard in this area. A lot of the new migrants, and I'm one of them, coming to Australia just 20 years ago, it is very hard to navigate the space and understand exactly even the academic structure of our schools and the system. And then to go and find resources of what and where, it is not easy. I would strongly recommend that the schools that these girls are at, and the teachers and educators who are currently listening, and the career practitioners who are here, to go extra, even seek out these girls, because many times these girls won't come seeking for these resources. So we have to go to them and say, these are some things, or have a direct conversation with their parents and do this legwork for them, because language is a barrier. Understanding the culture and the space is a barrier, and we need to do far more than what we are doing currently. But this is a good place to start, that we as educators have that awareness that we need to reach out more.
Thank you very much, Veena, and that's some really good perspectives there. Scott, in terms of your perspectives of working with a range of schools in New South Wales, what are some of the resources or procedures that put in place to support girls from underrepresented communities?
First and foremost, that's everything that we do. So I mentioned different hats. So my probably main job in New South Wales Department of Education, the Industry Schools Partnerships Program, and we don't have academies in metro cities. We have them in communities which are typically in the underrepresented communities. More so with our Aboriginal, obviously girls, lower socioeconomic. So they are our target areas, and that's what we work on. I've just started actually putting some resources up. We're currently working with the Young Indigenous Women's STEM Academy, which is a great program. If you've got a young Indigenous woman that you're working with that gets additional support. So there's funding for mentorships, for programs to get them to events. So one of the big events that we've got, or two big events we've got coming up this year, Young Space Explorers, and the new space workforce experience, we've got funding from industry to get people from those organisations to our events. So even though we have events in Sydney, we get funding to provide accommodation, travel, and we target those with for school systems, the ICSEA value, if you like, so index of educational, I'm not going to get this right, socioeconomic disadvantage. So our programs get targeted at those particular schools, and it's about getting as many of those young people who would not normally have those opportunities to be involved in hands-on activities, but also have exposure to experts in the field. So with the Young Space Explorers, which is in November, we've teamed up with the 16th annual Space Forum. So we're going to have people from all over the world that are going to be working with our young people, and they're traditionally all going to be from these underrepresented communities that are going to be involved in this from all over New South Wales. So also Department of Education funds the Orbi Space program for department schools that are in underrepresented communities. So that program, absolutely fantastic program, goes for 6 months, looks at coming up with a pitch for the planet. But the majority of schools that were involved in that program were Catholic or high-end independent schools. So we funded 50 students to go into that program. Proud to say, school just down the road from me, Rutherford Technology High, a student profoundly deaf with a group of students that were selected because they were non-attenders of the school, won that competition. So giving the option and support to these young people who are underrepresented, this is what they're capable of doing when supported. So this is something that I am most passionate about. So providing those resources, getting them access to mentors, getting them access to different programs that are around there to be able to do these things. So if you have students that are in that category, particularly that are in New South Wales, but some of my programs are national as well, please get in contact, and I'll do my best to help them when I can.
Fantastic. And I can see Vena's put her hand up, so I'll jump back to her, but I could certainly see the passion that you have for that, Scott, and I have seen you in action, so I can also validate that all of his enthusiasm and passion has made such a difference in New South Wales.
Similar to what Scott said, in Victoria as well, and I'm highlighting this because if there are educators from Victoria, there are lots of programs that are available in Victoria that are sponsored for schools with low SES student populations, especially girls, and almost all programs that are run in STEM, whether it is for girls or not, as a co-ed space, have a sponsorship component that is directed towards this. So it's, I'll paste a link about the Victorian STEM ecosystem that is done by the Victorian scientist, leading scientist, and that will give you a breadth of all the initiatives that are there in Victoria that you can look into.
Fantastic. And certainly with Scott and Vena being from New South Wales and Victoria, that's not the only states where things happen in STEM. Certainly linking into your Department of Education in the state that you're based in. And I have to acknowledge that we have some people attending today from Papua New Guinea, as well as the United Kingdom, as a part of our participants this afternoon. So linking in with your Department of Education system is certainly one way, plus also some of your industry groups support the underrepresented groups. And it is becoming much better funded in terms of that support. And if you're unsure and you are a family member or somebody that is in academia or industry that's not sure, you can connect with the school to ask, how can I help? Or connect with the school to say, we need support. And Scott highlighted another great program, the Schools Plus Teaching Awards, that also support programs and projects and also provide sponsorship for schools that are from low socioeconomic areas to fund programs as well as opportunities for young people to access things that they normally wouldn't. And I'm also going to give a bit of a shout out to the Indigenous Young Women's Academy from CSIRO, which I've also worked quite closely with. It's a fantastic program that gives young girls, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander girls, a lot of support. In terms of our families and parents, and this, we acknowledge that there are a range of family members that have connected this afternoon on this online panel, and a lot of questions around supporting girls to remain positive and confident, and supporting them to pursue a career in STEM, and acknowledging how to support in a male-dominated environment. And we do acknowledge that STEM currently is male-dominated, and we are working very hard to provide mentors, provide people that are able to be aspirational examples for our young girls to look up to. So this afternoon, we're going to look and get some examples from our panelists around supporting our young girls to remain positive, confident, support them around pursuing that career, but also acknowledging how we support girls that might want to pursue an area that's more male dominated. So Karen, have you got any words of wisdom?
Oh, I don't know if I can compete with the other words of wisdom, but I've got some pointers that I could share. I've just put a link in it. We produced a special edition of Careers with STEM Indigenous last year, which has brought together some amazing stories of Indigenous STEM professionals. And then following that, we worked with some Indigenous education consultants to create teacher resources to incorporate that content into curriculum. So it kind of gives more of a context around the content, but also has some, advice on how it could be incorporated into classrooms as well. And yeah, it says, what was mentioned before, you can't be what you can't see. So when we put together an issue, we kind of go through it very meticulously and make sure we've got a really broad representation of all different cultural groups and all different demographics. And we build upon that. We keep all those stories on the website and build upon those. And we've also got some tabs you can search by, like role models, women in STEM, and role models Indigenous in STEM as well. So if you're ever looking for some inspiring stories or successful role models, you can pull them out of the website anytime.
Fantastic. That's really good. And apologies, I didn't include you on the last one, Karen. I was like looking, going, oh, we're running out of time. But certainly I've had a look at that magazine, and I would highly recommend it. Some really, really good stories and support resources as well. Lucy, what's your perspectives in terms of supporting girls in a male-dominated area pursuing a career in STEM?
I can only speak from my own experience. When I was 17, I left school and I joined the Air Force. So I've worked in a pretty male-dominated environment. I became an air traffic controller, went through ADFA, the Australian Defence Force Academy, and I was in the Air Force for 8 years. So as a female, I think when I went through ADFA, it was 1 girl to every 7 men, boys who started. So it was pretty male dominated, but it was excellent. And that we've come such a long way now in terms of putting equity measures in place and doing the right supportive things. That being said, I think that to help our girls feel more confident, we need to make sure they understand boundaries. They understand who they can talk to when there are problems. That's something that we don't always do very well. We don't always signpost how they can go and seek support or seek help if anything goes wrong. That's in any environment, not just in a male-dominated environment. And the other thing is that as an industry, as a group of people who are interested in promoting more women in STEM, we need to do more to make work more flexible, make it easier for women to continue staying in the profession, because it isn't always as easy in male-dominated professions to stay maybe a little bit later in your career, especially if you want to do something like have a family or travel or have some sort of work-life balance. So that's more of an industry-led thing, is in we need to support women more and give them more flexible work options.
Fantastic, and great to see the connection through the different times of a career, rather than just considering girls, but also the pathway in which a woman will develop and those needs as they go on. Scott, have you got any perspectives you'd like to share in terms of supporting girls to be positive and confident in a male-dominated environment?
You were talking about advice for parents, so I'm going to put my parent hat on, because I've got a daughter who is going into a STEM-based area. And look, this again something that I'm very passionate about, and just advice, like the main person that a young person will talk to about a career is their parent. And often when I've spoken to young women who have gone into non-traditional areas, it's because they've followed in the footsteps of their mother or their father in particular. So as a father, my advice is to, you've got to be that support base, and be a good role model as a male to your daughters, for the males out there. Provide them with affirmation of their worth. They are going to, in some of these circumstances, come up with in circumstances that are less than ideal, particularly in some industry areas in STEM. Unfortunately, that is still part of the case, although we have come a long way. So I think working with them on how to deal with difficult situations and how to disarm these people who may be less motivated than what we are in terms of equity. Again, addressing the stereotypes. I trained in home economics, in food tech, so I'm big about this whole the gender and gendered jobs. So trying to be a positive role model in myself and my children. I've got a young son who's going into a STEM career as well, and I want to instill in him strong attitudes towards women in the workplace. And I think as the only male on the panel, I think it is really, really important that, and I'm so glad that, Sarah, that I was invited here, because it's to solve a lot of the issues. The other 50% of the population being male are a big part of having of what's going to be that solution. So thank you for including me in this.
Absolutely, and I agree, it's not a women's problem, it's an everyone's problem, and certainly everyone being a part of supporting people, whether it's on the journey of starting a pathway or working in a workplace. Everybody needs to be a part of that support. Veena, in terms of the girls that you teach, how are you providing and supporting girls to be positive and confident in their pursuits?
What we do at Viewbank College is have these special sessions where we invite parents to come and explore STEM along with their daughters. And this is a big thing, because it is important for girls to see that it's okay to fail and it's okay to learn at any age. But for a lot of parents who are there from young kids, I would say a good starting place is to really play using things like Lego or bridges with girls, because usually that's an area, or even get your daughters a toolkit, hand tools, and get them to do a small project. It is that overcoming that bias in their own mind about what they can and cannot do is the first step. And when that confidence sets in and they see their parents as a partner with them, I think that confidence boost is tremendous. So I urge all the parents who are here to really take up engineering or any project or research project for that matter with your daughter and explore that. And it will be something that both the parent and the child will have good memories of, and at the same time develop that confidence in your daughter.
Fantastic. And I'm very aware that we only have about 10 minutes left of our panel today. So in terms of the panel, we're getting towards the end of a lot of the questions that were asked. However, yes, there's still a few, but I do want to allow that if there's somebody that would like to ask a question from our attendees, please feel free to put it in the chat and direct it to a particular person. Or if you'd like to unmute yourself, feel free to do that in order for us to be able to answer any burning questions that you have. I want to be able to allow anybody that would like to do that a moment to do that now. Otherwise, I will continue asking some of the questions that we've got from when you registered. So I'll give you a moment. Whilst you are typing into the chat, there was some mentions around how to support as a mentor, or how do you mentor a young person in their STEM journey. And in terms of mentoring, that was mentioned by Lucy before as a potential way to support girls. So Lucy, are you able to give maybe some key tips on how you mentor a young person?
Yeah, and there are some great organizations out there doing this, and I'll put some in the chat in a minute. But they tend to be local, so they tend to work with set numbers of schools or students and provide one-to-one mentoring. I think if you're in that mentoring relationship, it's really important to be honest, and to answer questions honestly with a young person and to give them your insights. But also to remember where they're at. So if you're quite a way into your career, don't assume that they're going to be able to understand or kind of take in all of the things that you're telling them. So really pitch it to their level. And it's about that relationship. So I can't remember, I think it was Karen early saying about networking. So if you're a mentor, the mentoring is one part of it, but it's probably going to be a couple of years down the track when they need an internship or they need a connection to find some other job. That's where the some of the best value from that mentoring relationship is going to come out. So building those networks and allowing that young person access to your networks as well is really important.
Fantastic. And Karen, because you mentioned the networking before, what's your insights in terms of supporting a young person through a mentoring opportunity?
Yeah, I think what networking provides is opportunities to try new things and to experience new environments as well. So I think in terms of supporting a young person, it's important to give them a taste of a lot of different things so that they get the chance to land on something they really like. And it's also important, I think, to tailor that to what their interests are and really listen carefully to what they're expressing an interest in, and then trying to connect it with something maybe in STEM or maybe elsewhere, but it's going to kind of open their eyes a little bit. So you might kind of have a daughter who's, say, interested in pop music or fashion or modeling or something, and you could maybe choose a role model like Carly Kloss, who's a famous American model, actually runs a code academy in New York, and she sort of studied coding at college. There's also, I found out recently, Doja Cat, a rap star, did marine science at college. So little bits of information like that can kind of shift some of the stereotypes that they might have absorbed over time around who does STEM and what the jobs look like and what their opportunities are. So I think supporting their interests and exposing them to new and varied experiences often is going to be really positive for them.
Fantastic. We've actually had a question in the chat. It doesn't have who the person's name is, but it's the Bionics Institute Girls in STEM program. In terms of that program, it's asking for where we get funding for the program. Firstly, I'd recommend your local government or federal government in terms of engaging STEM initiatives. There's generally STEM funding for engaging young people. Also, I would recommend looking at, there's a grant finder that you can look and search for particular things, especially around working with might be marginalised groups, regional areas, girls in STEM. I'd recommend to that question to look there. If it's also engaging schools, you could go for the link that Scott mentioned before around Australian Schools Plus that have funding opportunities for girls programs. I would certainly be taking a screenshot or saving the chat to dig through all of those recommendations. Another great example of a mentoring program that Lucy's popped in the chat is Unique You, that connects you with a range of industry experts in terms of giving that support. Veena, when you've had young people being mentored, are there particular things that you've said to the industry people around that mentoring?
When some of our students have gone in these mentoring programs, what I have looked for, I have requested, is to give them a real authentic experience of what both the pros and cons of this is, and not just give a very glossy image, because that is not helpful, and talk them through the problems, because they can see that you have developed the resilience and a way of dealing with that, and that's such an important skill, because we don't want young people to go in and think everything is going to be absolutely just rosy. There will be problems, and we need to show them this. So that's something that is an authentic work experience mentoring program for me, and really get them to do actual work. And so yes, it may be hard in certain scenarios, but as much as possible, give them some real work and mentor them in that space.
Fantastic. Well, we have 2 minutes left, and we have our expert panel for those 2 minutes. So my last question to each expert is, what is your key word of advice to girls and families, industry, whoever you'd like to give your snippet of advice to, in terms of engaging and supporting somebody navigating a pathway in STEM? And Karen, we're going to start with you, please.
Fantastic. Well, I guess my first piece of advice would be to really challenge your own stereotypes around what STEM jobs are. STEM jobs aren't about working in a lab. They're not about working on maths equations all day or building bridges or even coding in a basement. STEM jobs are everywhere. So it's important to kind of have that broad view. STEM jobs are in e-commerce and fashion retail. They're in climate change. They're in social good and charity work. You know, they're in sports. They're absolutely everywhere. So I think really smashing through what those jobs look like is important. But I'd also say to, when talking to girls and students who maybe have got a resistance or a barrier against STEM already, is don't discount them already, because those STEM careers and occupations need the designers and the artists and the communicators and the people that are good at writing and language and things like that. So even if a student does not want to pursue a STEM study pathway, it doesn't mean they're not going to end up in a STEM role at some point. So just really, my advice would be have a broad outlook on what STEM jobs are and who can do them.
Thank you so much, Karen. Veena, what's your last word of wisdom?
My last word of wisdom would be to parents, who are the greatest influences. Please do take time and explore STEM with your daughters and children. It's such an important. I got into STEM because my dad decided to open gadgets at home and get me to repair it with him, and fail miserably, and I learned so much out of that. and got me hooked into experimentation and electronics. So I would strongly encourage, even if you are not a STEM person, just go and give it a go. We want our young people to go and give it a go, so we need to model that first.
Thank you, Veena. Lucy, your last snippet.
So my last tip would be to think broad when you're thinking about STEM pathways. Think outside of the hero jobs, those ones we always think of first, and to widen your idea about what a STEM pathway could look like, because when you can start to do that, then you can start to open your options and really start to see where you might go with it. So that would be my last tip.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And Scott, your last word of advice.
My thing would be the definition of STEM is sometimes misunderstood. To me, STEM is solving problems. And then we're looking at the type of problems that we have in the world at the moment, climate change, we've got war, we've got all these things sort of happening around us. It's going to be our problem solvers who are going to solve these issues. So my piece of advice would be, if you like solving problems, STEM is the job for you, but mostly find your passion. I love my job. I love what I do. When you find a job that you're passionate about, you'd never work a day in your life.
Well, thank you so much to the very, very generous panelists this afternoon, Karen, Veena, Lucy, and Scott, for giving up their time and expertise to share with our attendees this afternoon. I encourage you to connect, to ask questions, and really, if you need help, reach out. Women in STEM Australia is here to help you. The experts that have generously given you their time have given you links, but reach out if there's a particular person you'd like to speak to. We can connect you with them in the future. Encourage you to stay curious and to give things a go. And I thank you for being a part of this panel, Navigating a Pathway in STEM with Women in STEM Australia. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you again. Goodbye. Thank you.